darkness returned to Bill Hamilton not through the sound of gunfire or a sudden financial collapse, as people often whisper about those who sit atop power, but through the smallest, most imperceptible details. It crept into his life through glasses of water handed to him, vitamins prepared in advance, perfectly arranged meals, and the gentle smile of Hayley, the woman he believed, was caring for him with absolute devotion. To Bill, the early signs seemed harmless. The heavy fatigue after endless business negotiations, a few dizzy spells from staying up too late, the fleeting headaches he accepted as an inevitable tax of age and responsibility. But to Hayley, every moment was a calculated step, a carefully designed sequence leading him closer to the edge without him ever realizing he was being pushed. Hayley was not the impulsive type. Her softness was a mask, beneath which lived a cold, sharp, and disciplined mind. She observed Bill, meticulously memorizing his habits, moods, and physical rhythms, crafting her plan like a long-term investment strategy. She chose a toxin that was colorless, odorless, slow-acting, something that could be mistaken for exhaustion, stress, or one of those vague illnesses doctors name but never fully explain. Each time Bill drank, Hayley's eyes softened. Her hand brushed his shoulder tenderly. Her gaze carried both concern and affection. She was not only poisoning his body, she was numbing his instincts, teaching him to surrender his health, his life, into her hands as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Hayley's motives were not merely about money. Wealth was only the surface. Beneath it lay envy, resentment, and the burning humiliation of living in the shadow of a man who had everything but was never entirely hers. Bill had fortune, influence, a name that carried weight in Fairmont Crest. He had Chelsea, a family, a legacy, a web of relationships that ensured Hayley would forever remain the outsider, trying to prove her worth through obedience and perfection. But Hayley wanted more. She wanted assurance that one day, when Bill was no longer lucid or no longer alive, everything would belong to her. Not to his daughter, not to the loyal lawyers who guarded the Hamilton name, and not to the women he once protected. She wanted to move from the role of the chosen companion to the role of total controller. The deeper she went, the more the plan became an obsession. Hayley began to savor the sight of Bill weakening. Each time he leaned against the wall for balance, each tremor in his hand as he signed documents, each weary sigh he blamed on overwork filled her with a twisted satisfaction, part guilt, part triumph. Yet she failed to see that she, too, was being chained to the plan. A single misstep, a misplaced glance, one careless question, and everything would collapse, dragging her down with it. Bill had lived his life among deceit, secret negotiations, and power games, both political and financial. His instincts hadn't dulled just because his body had. When the symptoms no longer aligned with stress or age, when the headaches began to follow a pattern, when the strange taste in his drink appeared and vanished exactly on the days Hayley seemed tense, Bill started connecting the fragments. The first spark of suspicion hit him harder than any poison in his blood. The thought that the woman caring for him could be the one killing him slowly filled him with rage, shame, and a deep sense of violation. Yet, instead of confronting her, his survival instincts told him to stay quiet. If Hayley was indeed poisoning him, facing her directly would only make her act faster. He needed certainty, proof, and answers. Was she acting alone? Or was this part of something larger? Something tied to inheritance, shares, political enemies, or old grudges buried beneath the manicured calm of their gated community. One morning, as Hayley turned her back, Bill poured the remaining water into a small vial and slipped it into his jacket pocket, like a man well-versed in carrying hidden evidence. He drove straight to Madison's clinic, not only because he trusted her expertise, but because she owed his family a debt. Years ago, Bill had protected her during a professional scandal that could have destroyed her. The moment Madison saw him, pale and trembling, she knew something was terribly wrong. His breathing was shallow, his eyes a mix of exhaustion and barely contained fury. When the results came in, Madison froze. What she saw on the screen would shatter a family if spoken aloud. But if she stayed silent, she would become an accomplice. Chemical traces, sedatives, prolonged accumulation, this was no accident. It was deliberate poisoning. In that instant, Madison faced her own moral reckoning. She could falsify the report, as she had once been tempted to do for others. She could warn Hayley and bargain her loyalty for security. Or she could remain silent, pretending ignorance, keeping peace with a dangerous woman. But Bill's eyes pulled her back from that. Moral granis. In them was not just anger, but profound betrayal from a man who had trusted her completely. Her choice to speak the truth wasn't an act of heroism. It was a desperate attempt to salvage her remaining humanity. When Bill heard her words, his world shattered, then hardened in a heartbeat. Every memory of Hayley, the late-night vigils, the comforting words, the embraces, transformed into proof of manipulation. His rage did not explode outward. It crystallized into something silent and lethal. He left the clinic not as a wounded husband, but as a man, preparing for war. Hayley began to sense the shift before she understood it. Bill's absence, his unanswered calls, the subtle irregularities in her perfect plan gnawed at her confidence. She had gone too far to turn back now. Stopping meant risking discovery. Continuing meant accelerating the death of a man whose power could crush her if he survived. When Hayley spotted Bill's car, parked outside Madison's clinic, her heartbeat stuttered. She knew instantly that a line had been crossed. From that moment on, she was no longer the hunter. She was the cornered animal, ready to claw her way out of any threat to her freedom. Madison, once a harmless doctor, now became a liability, an exposed link that could unravel everything. In Hayley's mind, new scenarios formed. Rapidly. Manipulate Madison, bribe her, threaten her, falsify records, spin a narrative that Bill was mentally unstable, addicted, or paranoid. Or worse, arrange an accident before he could speak. Meanwhile, Bill was driving home with a plan just as cold. Anger was not enough. He needed understanding. Was Hayley acting alone? Was someone using her to eliminate him? Could Madison truly be trusted? Or was she still protecting her own secrets? And was Chelsea, his daughter, already part of a larger, hidden scheme? Bill knew that one wrong move could destroy everything. If he acted rashly, Hayley could twist the story, painting him as delusional, abusive, or unstable from work pressure. His silence, he realized, had to become his weapon. When he stepped through the mansion doors, Hayley greeted him with her usual grace, a prepared dinner, a look of tender concern. But the air changed instantly. The man standing before her was not the weary husband who needed care, but one who understood he had been betrayed with intent. There were no accusations, yet the distance in his gaze, the measured breath, the quiet coldness said everything. From that moment, their marriage ceased to exist. What remained was a duel for survival. Bill began quietly gathering evidence, cross-checking medications, reviewing legal papers, consulting his lawyer, even considering hidden cameras. He couldn't allow Hayley to twist the narrative and become the victim. And yet, part of him burned for retribution. His pride, once built on control and precision, now demanded that he handle this himself. To expose her publicly would be too easy. He wanted her to feel the trap closing, to lose everything the way she had made him lose himself. Hayley, sensing the change, grew more vicious in thought. There was no going back. Every option now was painted in crime. She considered increasing the dosage, staging a car accident, an electrical fire in the mansion. She thought of coercing Madison into rewriting the report, framing Bill as an alcoholic, a self-destructive workaholic, so that everyone would doubt the victim and not the culprit. Her thoughts were no longer defensive, they were declarations of war. Once cornered, Hayley would destroy anyone in her way, even the man who had once been the center of her world. Madison stood at the most dangerous crossroads. To side with Bill was to invite Hayley's wrath. To stay silent was to betray her own ethics. Fear paralyzed her, Yet the guilt of silence was worse. She knew every moment she hesitated, the poison continued its work, or worse, the situation might spiral into irreversible tragedy. All three, Bill, Hayley, and Madison, were now trapped in a silent battlefield where every decision carried the risk of self-destruction. What began as a slow poisoning had turned into a psychological war between adults driven by power, ego, and survival. Inside the grand mansion, beneath warm chandeliers and polished silverware, the image of a loving home had vanished. What remained was a battleground cloaked in elegance. A man carrying betrayal in his blood, a woman hiding her crimes behind devotion, and a doctor torn between morality and fear, knowing that whichever side she chose, someone would pay with everything they had. If Bill chooses silence and keeps pretending, what would life inside that house become? Every meal would turn into a battlefield, every glance an unspoken threat. Who would collapse first? Could Bill ever forgive her? Or would hatred slowly transform him into the very monster he despised? Cold, calculating, willing to do anything for vengeance? And if Hayley were carrying his child, would that life be a victim or a weapon she would wield to survive? That question alone could open a new door to tragedy, one from which none of them might return. And most importantly, is poison just a metaphor for the spiritual destruction of relationships at Fairmont Crest, where betrayal is served with a glass of red wine and a perfect smile? Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. All the content I make is just speculation and personal sharing. If you find the video interesting and useful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting speculations, please share them in the comments section for everyone to discuss. I appreciate all your contributions and support. Sincerely, thank you.